Okay, part 3. Let's just pick up right where we left off. Now, we left off after we were listening to pretty much the bulk of the interview with Casey and Emma. And Casey's testimony had brought forth some pretty fantastic claims, some stuff that's really hard to digest, that these nonverbal autistic children, many of them at least, are telepathic. They have been genetically augmented, and they have what some might term supernatural abilities. But they are being completely misdiagnosed by a medical community that is in the Stone Age. So I know some of you have been waiting for the last 3 parts of this series, The Entity, and I do have, as you can see on the screen, I have all 5 parts. They were ready to upload, and that's why it said at the end of the video, like, I'll upload these one right after the other. But because these are such controversial claims, I decided after I uploaded part 1 and part 2 on YouTube that I was going to add a segment right here at the beginning of part 3. The supporting evidence that I wanted to add right here before we go any further is from a podcast called the Telepathy tapes. Now, as fate would have it, or should I say God's timing is perfect, I was so nervous, not nervous, but I knew that this could be highly offensive information to people, especially people who have autism in their family, which I do. Many of you who have followed me for years know about my son and what happened after his first set of injections at 2 months old, and how he had to go into Children's Hospital, and he went into like trance-like states, and every time he went into REM sleep, he would shoot straight up and projectile vomit. It was really, really bad. But he's pulled out of that over the years. I've done, many of you know some of the detox treatments that can be effective in reversing some of these symptoms. And that's why we are here to have this discussion, because the mainstream medical community is not just in denial, they're combative about anybody being healed in any way from this transhumanist agenda. Well, as God would have it, as you guys know who walk with him, that he confirms our journey step by step, that after I uploaded this video in the summer of 2024, then a couple of months later, people started sending me clips about, have you heard about this new podcast that came out a couple of months after I posted this video? So I went and checked it out, and it is perfect timing. God's timing is so perfect. When I said he revealed next level, and this was the exact thing that he was talking to me about, that at the same time he was talking to Emma about it, and he was giving Casey this experience that I just played for you in part 2, and that he had this entire team of researchers behind the scenes, parents, educators, nurses, caretakers, an entire team of scientists and a camera crew that were traveling all around the world, documenting that there's this new phenomenon that people are noticing. These nonverbal autistic children have telepathic abilities. So before we go any further, I just want to put in, 5, 6, 7, 8 small clips from different episodes of the Telepathy tapes to give you, a taste of what they were doing and what they documented. I highly recommend going and watching if you haven't already. Someone mentioned it on Rogan, so she got quite a lot of views. So although hardly anybody had heard about those of us like me or Emma or anybody else talking about it, this podcast did get quite a lot of attention, which I am so grateful for. This is not a competition. This is a team effort. And because they were faithful to do this work and God gave them that shout out on Rogan, now we can finish having this conversation without sounding like lunatics or conspiracy theorists, to say this is really happening in our world. Let's have a medical discussion about it. But the Lord has also entrusted me with a piece of the puzzle that he has asked me to deliver to the rest of the body. And that is something that is not talked about. Kai doesn't address it at all in any form in this Telepathy tape podcast throughout the whole season or the next season. When they go into the next season, they're not really dealing with autism anymore. They're just dealing with the nature of consciousness. So they took it a whole different direction. And likewise with Emma and Casey, as you just heard through the bulk of the interview I played in part 2, neither one of them addressed transhumanism at all, or artificial intelligence, or that this is a purposeful augmentation of autists. And that's where my puzzle piece comes in. I'd like to join forces with all of these people and submit my part. And that is something that I can't do just right here in this one series, The Entity, but I have been moving my archive over onto YouTube since I got reinstated. Can you believe it? I got reinstated after all these years in cyber exile. I got reinstated on YouTube. I'm sure they have ulterior motives, but whatever, I'm already on the list. And I am more than happy to give my life a living sacrifice to try and stop even one soul from taking the mark of the beast. So if you are new to this information and you watch this and you're intrigued and you want to hear us out, I would recommend going down to about here, the microscope images, and see. That's the actual images of the self-assembling synthetic biology and nanobioelectronics. I know that's a mouthful, but that's what the technocracy is using. So then the very next video in order is the Charlie Kirk, Tyler Robinson video, and I talk about the DARPA N3 project in there. And that is not only tied into the Utah universities and the Tyler Robinson case and all of that, but it is specifically the technology we are talking about here, which is synthetic telepathy. It's a bidirectional AI brain neurological interface, which we just mentioned in the 1111 video right before this series. If you go to around the 27-minute mark in there, we mentioned that they're open about it. They call this AI mind reading technology telepath, with the Illuminati all-seeing eye logo, of course. And of course, this is just one of the smaller companies, but there are just zillions of them, and they're all really open about it, that this is what it is. It's synthetic telepathy. AI can now read your mind, and the technocracy is augmenting humans with an AI neural lace, a neural link. It's not a secret. Okay, then the next two would be this biggest cover-up, and that covers all of the injection schedules, going back to before I was born. And then Welcome to Westworld, you can kind of gather what that is. Bio and tech, humanoid robots, that everybody's looking forward to these robots that are going to be the avatars to house the artificial intelligence so that it can achieve the workplace duties that it is supposed to be taking over for humanity. But as I often show in my videos, and I will here again in this video, that there is a group of mad scientists, and they're not seeking to build robots to be the avatars. They are seeking to neural link, neural lace humans into the AI so that humans are the puppets or the avatars. They become literal human robots or cyborgs.
We already have, we're already a cyborg.
Okay.
I think one of the solution that seems maybe the best one is to have an AI layer. If you think of like you've got your limbic system, your cortex, and then a digital layer, sort of a third layer above the cortex, that could work well and symbiotically with you. I mean, just as your cortex works symbiotically with your limbic system, your sort of a third digital layer could work symbiotically with the rest.
This is something that's surgically inserted or bred into the species, or what?
This is with nanobots that enter your neocortex.
The fundamental limitation is input-output. So we already have, we're already a cyborg.
Then the next one leading up to where we are right now in this conversation would be weird science. And that's where I introduce the augmented reality spectrum and what autism really is. Then the next series is called The Veil or Extinction. and it deals with these alternating realities that people have been experiencing, not just what we're going to be talking about right here with lucid dreaming and telepathy, but there are people who are living in multiple realities, and they alternate when their brain frequencies change at sleep. So they're living two lives simultaneously. In that series, I show some really intense cases, especially like prison inmates who were some of the early people being experimented on and what they went through. But now it's becoming increasingly obvious to the masses that they have been linked into something. And that can be seen through the sort of internet meme or the whatever's this viral thing about Mall World, which we know we've talked about for years, that over the years, tons of people have experienced astral projection into these dark realms, these sentient world simulations, against their will. They're just shifted. Their consciousness is shifted when they hit REM sleep. And the beta tests for that started before 2008. So if you go back to this video that I posted about 4 years ago, called 2008 Mystery, Strange Posters in Portland, Ever Dream of This Man? The This Man mystery. If you go and watch that about the D-Wave quantum computer and how the AI is mass broadcasting, and they were trying to perceive how far and how many brains could pick it up, that's all in that video right there, the beta tests for what we are talking about right here, right now. So if you want to know more about the early days of this technology and how it links in with the D-Wave quantum computer, which is delta waves, which is sleep frequency, it's this trance-like state. That's why they call it D-Wave, the delta brain waves. Then if you want to hear about my Mall World experience, where I talked about the back rooms and my experience when I went into the soul trap of this mall world, I even called it a mall. This video was, I don't know what, 6-7 years ago or so, long before it was anything viral on TikTok. I was talking about Mall World and this joint experience that my father and I both had on the same night. I went ahead and looked up the timestamp on that really quick. So it was about the 4.5 hour mark, 4 hours, 33 minutes around there, but I'm a little ways into it here. But I wanted to show you, this was a re-upload of that video, and that was 5 years ago. Well, here, I'll just play just a minute of it to show you that, yeah, I described it as a mall before Mall World was cool. And there were these enormous stairs right in front that led up into the mall. So it was like one big platform, and then there were these wide stairs like that, and it was just like one little level up, and you went into the mall. And so over here, that's where all of the fancy restaurants is just full of people. And same way over here. This side over here on the left seemed much darker, though. It was already darker. But all the people over here on the right, in these restaurants and stuff, they looked okay, but it was not okay. But anyway, so I go up the stairs. I'm looking in there and I'm like, what is going on in there? What are all these celebrities and what's going on? So I walk up to go up the stairs, and this enormous angel is standing there. And he just puts his hand out, his palm out flat, and he says, "You are not allowed in here." And I was this little bitty person compared to him. He was probably, I don't know if I had to guess, he was probably 12 to 15 foot tall. And I just looked at him completely unafraid with authority. And I said, "I'm a servant of the Lord Jesus Christ. I can go anywhere I want." And then this little person, regular sized person, like a 6 foot tall person, comes running out from the side over here and says, "I'll show her around." So I go up the stairs and I go into this mall with this person, and they start showing me around. And we just go deeper. We go past the restaurants and stuff. And as we got deeper, the compartments got darker and darker and darker. This is real. I really warned about all of this stuff decades ago. Those of you who have followed me, now it's becoming common knowledge. We're seeing it unfold. But I'm telling you, God is real. And God has warned us and warned us and warned us. This isn't like the first warning. Hey, look at this. This is the last warning. We are coming down to the wire here. He's been warning them for decades, and they won't listen. They're just like, oh, no way. I mean, we still have a medical community who will not even acknowledge that the injection schedules are what is causing autism. I mean, I don't know how much hope is left. other than it seems to be accelerating. The awakening seems to be accelerating. But these trends, yes, the telepathy tapes got lots of views, but they never mention transhumanism. They never mention the sentient world simulation. They never mention synthetic telepathy, or like I just showed you with Elon Musk, clearly explaining the AI digital overlay on the cortex, merging two realities, two different realms, the artificial dimensions as well as the actual real dimensions. And it is not a perfect science. There is collateral damage when you start reprogramming neurons in people's brains. And it's way worse than just disrupting their motor skills. Some of these people are getting trapped in these other dimensions. This is not a joke. But now in this younger generation that were born into more of the gene therapy injections, they have like 80 some injections while they're still children. It's become sort of a blanket experience, a common experience among them, that they are linked into this metaverse. And that when their brain waves change to go into sleep frequency, they don't just go to sleep and rest. They are linked into this sentient world simulation, the metaverse, and everything that's been built in there, which is, similar to the stuff we see here in this world. It's a sentient world simulation. It's a simulation. But more importantly, that many of them have already realized, but not all of them. Some of them want to lucid dream. They are trying to go into these places. They are trying to astral project. And there are people who don't come back from that, which later on in this series, or in the next series, I think, I put those interviews in about horror stories of people who never came back. Their bodies laid in coma, but their consciousness never came back.
We talked about the back rooms and how people are going into these malls in their dreams. So this lady actually starts mapping it out, and other people in the comments are actually saying, yeah, I've been there too.
Mall world, the dream world I go to every night. We talked about the mall, and it's connected to the hospital, the school, and the airport. The ocean is behind this area because you can see the ocean outside of the mall. There's also cliffs onto the ocean, so like you can be up here, but you can't really get down there to the beach. The beach is like over here, kind of closer to where the cabins are and the outdoor market. So if you're at the cabins, you could probably make your way to the beach, and if you're at the airport, it's going to be cliffs over here.
Mall world is not what you think it is. A few days ago, I made a video talking about mall world, which is a place or a mall where thousands of people have said they have dreamt of, and they all describe the same exact layout of this mall. And these are all people that are not connected in any way, shape, or form. Some people were saying there was like a different dimension or like a different world that we can travel to in our dreams.
Some enthusiasts of the dream realm believe mall world may not be a mere illusion, but a soul containment grid hidden in the astral plane.
So anyway, it is the AI's soul trap in the making. It's still in process, but we are quickly running out of time. But anyway, what I'm getting at that is a really important takeaway here is that this is a stair-step project that started all the way back before the creation of Google. So Google was created to train the AI. And then the reason for the creation of AI wasn't just to have AI technology, it was to augment humanity. It's the Ubermensch program, the superhuman program. It's always been about augmenting reality. Google said it themselves. Here's a clip. I'll play the clip of Eric Schmidt, the ex-CEO of Google. He flat out says it.
It's no secret that Google has transhumanistic aspirations. In 2011, Stephen Levy made a bold statement about the company in his book, In the Plex, quote, "From the very start, its founders saw Google as a vehicle to realize the dream of artificial intelligence in augmenting humanity."
And if you think about it, computers can give you digital senses that you did not even have. But they can really go back to that notion of making our lives, think of them as augmented humanity, making us better. Think of them as augmented humanity.
Period. Not to realize artificial intelligence as a way of realizing it. No, it was to augment us.
Look forward to a future in which Homo sapiens is superseded by a better, smarter, fitter model. Humanity 2.0.
We are probably one of the last generations of Homo sapiens.
Pretty soon, we're all going to be jacking our brains directly into the cloud like it's the Matrix. We're just going to plug our brains into it.
We will connect wirelessly our neocortex to the cloud.
This is with nanobots that enter your neocortex.
Right.
And I just have to tell you guys that every time I hear one of these guys say something like that, because they're saying this is the next thing that's going to be happening in the next decade or so, or a couple decades, and maybe sooner, depends who you ask, but just a nightmarish menagerie of every hive mind movie I've ever seen in my life just comes flashing forward to the front of my brain every time I hear them talk about it.
Okay, now to start the clips from the telepathy tapes. Before I do that, I'm going to play this 30 seconds again. And yes, some of you will be like, we get it. Why are you beating a dead horse? Because I have to. I have to. I don't know if it's because it's too big and too grotesque that people are like, it has to be anything but that. It's not anything but that. It is exactly what they are telling us to our faces.
We will connect wirelessly our neocortex to the cloud.
This is with nanobots that enter your neocortex.
Your cortex, and then a digital layer, sort of a third layer above the cortex.
This is with nanobots that enter your neocortex.
An AI layer.
Computers can give you digital senses that you did not even have. Think of them as augmented humanity. Augmented humanity.
So wait, isn't that exactly the same thing? Isn't ESP extra sensory, extra senses that we did not even have? And the billionaire technocrats are telling us to our faces that AI is going to augment humanity with extra senses, digital senses that we did not even have?
Computers can give you digital senses that you did not even have.
And you have basically superpowers in that with your computer.
And I just want to drive home one more time that there are people in positions of power that know about these kids, they know about these abilities, and they want to keep it a secret. Okay. So, let's see, I have a list of abilities that I'm aware of that these kids have talked to me about. And I do want to mention here that I can connect with the kids of this network. Like, it's not only the one that I'm working with full time. I can telepathically communicate with, I don't know how many, 5 to 8 kids. And sometimes there's more. Like, I'll see a kid that I used to work with in the past. And like, I was driving to work one day, and I was driving past where the school was, and I look over in the turn lane, and I see one of my old students in the car on their way to school. He looks at me through like 4 lanes of traffic, and I hear him. He says, "Help me, help me." And I'm just like, I mean, there's stuff like this happening to me all the time. Well, not all the time. It's kind of slowed down, but there's more, there's more kids out there. And they need help.
Yes, there are more. There are more kids out there, untold millions, and they need our help. Are you guys going to help me make some noise? This is ridiculous that we're looking at, 50,000 views or 100,000 views when frickin' Mr. Beast, of course, Beast, he can throw Jello up in the air and get like 5 million views. This is earth-shattering, paradigm-shifting information. This is the kind of stuff that deserves Nobel Prizes, Pulitzer Prizes. These are breakthroughs, medical breakthroughs, scientific breakthroughs, and yet we can't get more than 8 or 10,000 views on this information on YouTube, and we can't raise any crowdfunding. Everybody, you can live stream about Bigfoot and make frickin' $1,200. But I can't even keep my website up. I can't make my car payment. We can't get any support. These kids can't get any help. Are you guys going to help? We can make this go viral. We did it before they nailed my coffin shut and threw me out in the woods where I had no voice. But we're back, and I might be back for 5 minutes or 5 years, I don't know, but I'm back right now. Can we get more than 2,000 views on this? Do you care about these kids? Nobody's going to help them. The billionaires know about it. They're building Stargate. They're building the AI infrastructure. They already injected warp speed. And look, if you look at these VAERS reports that we've been putting up for years and years, that final layer, and it's not the final layer, but this newest layer of forced injections, that they literally threatened and coerced college kids, telling them they can't get an education unless they let the government inject them with experimental messenger RNA bio and technology. And then they have a, quote, mysterious anomaly of psychosis, nightmares, vivid dreams, people who are going into hallucinations that they cannot get out of. One of the reports read in this video was a 15-year-old girl that didn't come out of it. This is what we're talking about, these kids that go into nonverbal autism. What are you waiting for? Are you waiting for them to do it? I'm tired of waiting. We need to do it. These kids need our help now. We got to make some noise. We got to share this even if they ridicule us. Because the people that a lot of us are just waiting and waiting to do this, they're building the AI infrastructure. They're the ones who rolled out warp speed. They're talking about fucking Tylenol right now. Tylenol with autism. And yes, we've talked about the over-the-counter drugs being, and all of it being contaminated. But this is the issue. We know what is causing this. If they can't say it out of their freaking mouth, or they're not smart enough to see it, then we need to move on. We need real leaders. Leaders who are full of the Holy Spirit of the Most High God. Prophets of God who are bringing the message and the truth from the throne of God. And if they don't have wise counsel, then they need to get themselves a prophet up there in the White House. This Paula White crap ain't going to cut it. They need a servant of the Most High God up there to give them advice. And if they can see it, and they are doing this anyway, then we're dealing with the Antichrist right now. These kids need help right now. There are kids being born that are going to be injected tonight. This information needs to get out right now. And if we got to sidestep them and directly give it to the public because they're too much of a coward to open their mouth, or they're too weak to stand up and fight this beast system, then we'll stand up and fight it. Will you help me get the word out? Please, I am begging you. I implore you by the name of Jesus Christ. Help me get the word out.
The New World Order is going to take everything you got. They're going to take your children's soul. Are you going to keep bowing down to these people?
Okay, let's just keep marching forward. Either way, we got to keep marching forward. So this is just the introduction. This is the trailer to the telepathy tapes.
My son said to me, I can hear thoughts. And I said, impossible. And he said to me, you don't get the kind of gifts that I have if you lie.
Let's please multiply two numbers and see if he gets it.
Okay, what is it?
9, 0, 0.
Unbelievable.
1.
Maybe shuffle again, Dr. Powell. Oh.
Plus 2.
So he got the plus, too.
What is this phenomena happening? Why are his mind and my mind completely connected?
I knew that a lot of people would think, boy, Diane's gone off the deep end. But that's the risk any scientist takes when they challenge the current paradigm. Even though I knew I was risking my scientific reputation, I started testing them, and I found that they were exceedingly accurate.
What is the next number?
3.
After the medical board took my license away, I had to prove my sanity.
Dr. Tarrant, he's done these QEEG scans to see what's going on.
The biggest overall finding is really this increase of activation across all the brain waves. If there was no change, I would definitely be skeptical.
You cannot fake this.
We want answers.
Okay, the first two clips that I'm going to play are just some basic tests that they went through with a boy named Akil and a boy named Houston. Just a couple important takeaways from these beginning clips are just that this is not related to ethnicity or what country that these kids are from. This isn't just an American phenomenon. And the telepathy tapes does a great job of going around. They actually traveled around to different countries, over to the UK, through the United States, India, all of these different places, and they tested these nonverbal kids for telepathy. And the second takeaway is Houston's story is so typical. It's so heartbreaking. That's why I get so worked up, because they can't get any help from the mainstream medical community. When they go to the doctors flat out tell them, we don't know what causes autism. And then they tell them there is no cure for autism. And then they tell them horrific things like they can't hear you, or your child's not in there, or, you have to treat them like a toddler and just teach them for 20 years what the 3 primary colors are. Or square, that's a circle, that's and when you listen to these testimonies, which is also part of the phenomenon, if these children were not telepathic and are not telling the truth, then how do they know? That's what the parents say. How does my child know mathematics, history, all of these different things? They said when you talk to the kids, it's not that they were born as some prodigy. They say they are in this location together learning. They call it the hill. So the next two clips are going to be about the hill, which is very similar to the experience of the lucid dreaming and the mall world. All of these children are meeting hundreds and thousands that they have located, people that don't even know each other from different countries, who all say that they are meeting in this place called the hill, the meeting of the minds, and they go there and they teach one another. And they talk to one another and they have friends. There's even one episode where they talk about a boyfriend and girlfriend, that they live in completely different states, and yet they go there and meet and they are companions in this other realm. So anyway, the first two clips are just some basic tests and sort of background stories of some of the autistic people involved in the studies. And then the next two clips will be about the hill, which is fascinating.
I was heartbroken because I realized that my son was in there too, and he'd been trapped for over 2 decades and never given this opportunity to have a voice. Because I didn't know, and because I listened to all the experts and how I had failed him. Those were my initial thoughts, followed by, I have to know my son. I went home, I walked right up to Houston's bedroom, opened the door, and I looked at him and I said, Houston, I'm getting you a voice. I was absolutely resolute that this was going to happen.
And it did. They worked hard. It wasn't easy. It took practice and patience and commitment, but at the age of 21, Houston wrote his first full sentence on his letterboard.
I sat there in shock as my son spelled, I'm in here.
Like all parents in Katie's situation, they go through a period of discovering who their kid is and what they know.
I began to find out that my son knew far beyond what they would teach in a classroom. A lot of history, a lot of important events, and spiritual knowledge as well. He had never had any education at all. So I didn't understand how he could know so much.
It's important to note that Houston, like thousands of non-speakers around the world, are not taught as if they're smart. They're often taught preschool lessons like colors and shapes on repeat, even through high school.
He was denied any education because they assumed, based on the fact that he can't control his body, he has no understanding. And when he began to explain, he had to teach himself to read. And not just him, but his friends, they would all find incredible ways to educate themselves. If one of them learned something, they would all teach each other.
But how could they teach each other if they couldn't communicate?
I was confused by that. How do y'all have conversations when none of you can speak? And he explained that they all have unique gifts and that they're able to communicate to each other telepathically.
But before exploring the idea that non-speakers can communicate with each other telepathically, I wanted to understand how Katie came to believe her son was telepathic at all. She grew up in a very conservative community and family, and things like telepathy were not ever considered possible. So can you take me back to the very first moment when he first revealed he could read your thoughts and just what your reaction was? That had to be just really...
upsetting. Terrifying. He'd been just giving me this incredible amount of information, and one of my sons was questioning, how does he know all this? And being very critical. And I was upset with him for being so critical and not believing in his brother. But the question still remained, how was he learning? And he said, I can hear thoughts. And I said, bullshit. So then I asked him a question in my head without speaking, and he answered the question that I had asked him in my head. Then I brought my son and his friend up to witness it, and I had told the young man that was his friend, I said, Kit, get a thought in your head and sit there and don't think anything but that. And Houston spelled out what that young man was thinking. Crowds are very difficult, as you can imagine, because he's hearing everybody's. That's hard. You're hearing a thought, but you don't know who's responsible for the thought. I've seen him several times, literally, like we'd be at the gym and he would run into like a certain room and look around, trying to figure out who had that thought.
I was eager to talk to Houston's brother about all of this. Houston's brother is a Marine, and he had a tricky relationship with Houston growing up. Houston demanded a lot of his mom, and she was stretched thin as it was. And Houston's brother did not believe he was smart, and certainly did not believe Houston could read minds. And though he was a little reticent to participate, I was able to get him to answer a few questions.
What really got me off guard was that he's actually in there.
And then what about the telepathy? When you first heard about that, did you believe it?
Not at all. I did not believe that he was telepathic in any sort of way. It's just a very hard thing to convince me of.
Do you even believe it now, that he can read minds?
I have seen it with my own eyes, and it kind of changed my mind a little bit.
But how comfortable are you with this reality? Do you talk to your friends about it, like from the Marines or from school? And if yes, and they don't believe you, then how do you react? What do you say?
I would ultimately just have them see it in person. I'll bring Houston up to them and just tell him, hey, think of one little thing, and he writes it out on the board.
So he's read your friends' minds?
He has read my friends' minds before. I've seen it firsthand. It's just incredible to see this kind of stuff.
Which brings me back to the telepathy tests. We take a break for lunch, and when we return from lunch, I suggest doing more formal tests with Akil using his speaking device.
I wonder if there's like a random picture generator. That'd be cool, wouldn't it?
A random word generator.
Oh yeah, random word generator. Aha. Okay, oh look at this. Weird words, fake words. Holy, look how weird that word is.
Yeah, perfect.
We download a brand new random word generator in front of the camera on the spot, and then we set up the room to get various angles with our cameras.
I'm gonna start the shot right here. So there's nothing back here. We just have an empty room, a table, no mirrors.
With my camera, I did a 360-degree sweep of the room so people could see that there's no one in front of Akil giving him clues or mirrors or any reflective devices. In fact, Akil was often just looking down at the ground, looking at his hands. Even though the software probably makes the word very random, we have decided to always hit the button twice or 3 times to make the word super, super random.
Is this okay?
Yep.
The word she selects is Izzard, I-Z-A-R-D. Manisha is sitting next to Akil on the couch, and Manisha is closest to me. And my iPad, which now has the random word generator on it, is facing away from Akil toward my camera.
Z A R D.
Good, and then show us. Nice, Akil.
Okay, so I'm going to see if there's a random picture generator. Manisha is sitting on the couch, but Akil has gone back into this little nook off the dining room. It's a small room that we haven't been in yet today. And as Manisha's pulling up the image, I'm asking Michael to please try to go film Akil in the room where he's at. Manisha hits the button that says generate, and an image of red phone booths, the type you see in London, enter the frame.
Hey, Michael, can you go over here and get where he
Telephone.
is?
He said telephone. And what is the color?
Michael, I have this. Do you want to get him?
Red.
Akil sounds out telephone and then sounds out the word red. Okay, Katie, so can you tell me more about this talk on the Hill and how you found out about it?
He calls it the Talk on the Hill, and it's where other non-speakers collaborate. You think of it like a CB radio. They all get on the same channel. So they have these essentially group conversations where they all contribute. And he said it works both ways. They teach each other. They share information. They give hope to those who are being discouraged. They pray for each other. And yes, it is telepathic. That might seem extraordinary, but if you realize that like phones and computers, we don't have to be in the same room or zip.
And then Katie told a story, which I was happy to hear because it validates some of the claims about the Hill.
I got a message from a mom in Utah, whom I have never met. Her son spelled out to her, "Mom, Houston is my best friend." Her 9-year-old son, whom we've never met, spelled that out. And she was like, how?
In the north suburbs of Chicago in a private practice, and I predominantly see non-speaking autistic students.
Maria has been working with the non-speakers for over 20 years.
Over the past 5 years, I've learned that many of my students, all of them at this point, have telepathy and they can read thoughts and they can see spirits, and in some cases have been able to predict events happening that's in the future.
Okay, now did you catch that? She said that repeatedly one of the abilities that shows up is the ability to predict the future. And that's the same thing that Casey said that her client or friend, the child that she worked with and taught, that he told her was one of his abilities. He said the way we perceive things outside of the timeline is different than you guys do in your dimension. And that allows them to predict the future. And this also links back to the Stargate project. Now, a lot of people don't know that the Stargate project was a CIA project for remote viewing. And all of those secret programs kind of went underground in the 90s, and they quit talking about them, which is what they always do. They always say, oh yeah, we don't do that program anymore. But what it means is it went dark. So that was about the same time of the advent of AI. And it makes you wonder if the remote viewers that they were working with had similar augmentations to what these children have. Because a lot of the remote viewing, the way they predicted the future, it wasn't by skirting timelines and stuff. They predicted the future because they could go into a room and read the room. They could read people's thoughts. For example, let's say the Russians want to know what our Pentagon is doing, where our nuclear submarines are. Well, they're going to send their remote viewers to look, their psychic spies, to go into the room in the Pentagon where all the generals are having the meeting, and they're going to read their thoughts, and then they're going to come back and report that. Again, it's not that they are predicting the future by seeing the future. Their glimpses of the future are coming from reading people's minds, their plans for the future. And if you listen to the testimonies of these children, it's very similar. Casey's, the child that she cared for and taught, that was one of the things that he said. He predicted one time if she would go with him to the park, and if they would wait like X amount of minutes, then one of his friends would come in that he talked to in the realm, in the dimension that she had never met, when he told her that, no, there are lots of us and we talk. Come here, if you come with me, I'll show you, and one will show up. Well, he wasn't predicting the future. He was communicating and reading the mind of his caretaker and saying, okay, he's going to be at the park at 1. So, it wasn't that he was predicting the future through timelines. It was because he was reading people's minds and the plans that they had. And just to be clear, I'm not saying that that is the only way. I have an entire segment on timeline manipulation and some really cool stuff from the Bible about Jesus and how he was in multiple timelines at once. It's really cool. I was going to put it in here, but again, it's getting so late. I'll have to put it in the next video series. But for now, I just want to point out and be clear that I do believe there are other types of predicting the future that aren't just mind reading or remote viewing. The only reason I'm bringing that up now is because remote viewing was a huge part of Project Stargate. So seeing all of this in context, that they are continuing this project by building all of these AI data centers financed by the very people who were employed or contracted by the CIA way back in the day with the other Stargate project. I just wanted to make it clear that it doesn't escape anybody, that this is not a coincidence. It's not just randomly named the same thing. This is the same project. It's the next phase, some might say the final phase, of the AI, the all-seeing eye. That it's not just seeing through our surveillance cameras and the Internet of Things, but it's seeing through the eyes and minds of those who have been neural laced into the Internet of Bodies.
Hey, Internet friends. On President Trump's second day in office, he announced Project Stargate, a $500 billion joint venture introducing a new cast of characters. Larry Ellison's Oracle, Sam Altman's OpenAI, SoftBank, and MGX to construct an AI infrastructure over the next 4 years. Project Stargate was a CIA program from the 1970s to 1995 which explored psychic abilities, especially remote viewing for military intelligence, which I guess is, in this application, kind of predictive programming for the surveillance state grid. This CIA program aimed at gathering information targets through psychic means.
Okay, let me jump in really quick and just add on to what Grace is saying. She said by psychic means, but you can see here in the documents, it talks about using telepathy to spy on our enemies. Telepathy. So, same project.
Well, I don't need to be able to remote view CIA agents in their underwear to know that the majority of U.S. big tech is founded and funded by the CIA. In-Q-Tel is the CIA's venture capital arm, which was established to invest in technology companies to advance national security interests. And it has a neat little way of giving the illusion of a privately owned company through shadow corporation purchases, but whoop-de-doo, the tea leaves actually reveal its government intelligence. Funnily enough, with Oracle being the database and software portion of this Project Stargate endeavor, under the leadership of tribe member 80-year-old Larry Ellison, looking very young there, by the way, the CIA was actually Larry's first customer. Can you believe that? We're all shocked. The Oracle Corporation was founded in 1977 and named after a CIA project codename Oracle. Oracle Corporation was christened thus as it was the codename of a CIA project that all three original founders worked on when at the Amex Corporation, end quote. But I'll read from another article over here, quote, a quarter century later, close to a quarter of the company's revenue, $2.5 billion a year, still comes from selling software to federal, state, and local agencies. Oracle wouldn't exist if it weren't for government contracts, said Mike Wilson, author of the book, The Difference Between God and Larry Ellison. Also, back to weird coincidences with the CIA's original Project Stargate. The actual definition of an oracle is a person or thing considered to provide insight, wise counsel, or prophetic predictions, most notably including precognition of the future.
Okay, so I think you get it. Oracle, predicting the future, Project Stargate. It's all the continuation of one large project. And if you want more on the looking glass and the precognition, predicting the future part of it, and how the AI and the data centers and Project Stargate and Oracle and all of those CIA projects work together with Project Looking Glass, you can find a lot of detailed information on that in my Stranger Things series here on the screen, this one up here. Part 3 and Part 4, I think, probably have most of the information on Project Looking Glass and even how adrenochrome plays into that. And it's not what everybody else says. Although Larry Ellison's looking pretty young still, just saying. Okay, let's jump back and finish up the telepathy tape. I only have 2 small clips left that I'd like to insert here. And they are dealing with spiritual warfare, not just with prophecy and predicting the future and that type of thing. But these children report being able to see angels and demons, being taught by God, all sorts of things like that. And like you heard in episode 2 of this series, The Entity, in Casey's interview, she said that that's what the child that she works with reported. That some of the times when it looked like they were having fits for no reason, that they were actually in spiritual warfare. And when they're engaged in spiritual warfare, it's not exactly the same as it is for us here, because we see the symptoms of it. We see the mission and the assignments against our lives. We see, it's similar to seeing the wind blow. You don't actually see the wind, but you see the tree lean over. You see the leaves blow off and land on the ground. So you're not actually seeing the wind, you're seeing the results of it. That's kind of how we perceive spiritual warfare in our dimension. But these children are saying, no, like they're literally seeing demons as well as angels. So they're literally seeing the warfare. They are involved in the warfare in that dimension. And they said that they receive assignments from God to bring messages to humans. And that's really the last concept that I want to convey in this updated segment that I'm tacking on the front of episode 3 here. So here's the last 2 clips from Telepathy tapes, and then I will close out with a clip about Brandon Biggs, which I'm sure many of you remember that he correctly predicted the future. He correctly prophesied about Donald Trump being shot in the ear. He also correctly predicted the simultaneous attacks, where was it, in New Orleans and Las Vegas. So he's been very, very accurate in predicting the future. But many of you probably don't know that he has a nonverbal autistic daughter. So we'll talk about that right after this last clip from the Telepathy tapes.
Many of my students, all of them at this point, have telepathy and they can read thoughts and they can see spirits, and in some cases have been able to predict events happening that's in the future.
Maria then brings up the hill, which you learned about in episode 3, and this shakes my very foundation. I interviewed Maria before any mention of the hill was made public. The episodes weren't out yet. There wasn't anything on my website about it, so I was dumbfounded.
So 2 of them had explained a place that they gather, but it doesn't have any dimension to it. Because they gather together, they call it the hill because it kind of makes a hill of thoughts.
Okay, so back up really quick because this is unbelievable. So you're in the northern suburbs of Chicago, and can you tell me what they said about the hill or how it came up?
I said, tell me about the hill. Is it a place? And the answer was, not a place. It really has no dimension. We just all go there in our thoughts, and that's why we call it the hill. Even one of my students shared, he said, a lot of the people from here are there, but I don't talk to them when I go to the hill. I talk to this person from Denmark and this person from Canada, because one talks about time travel and the other one talks about bees and the environment.
I was truly at a loss for words. And Carrie in Pennsylvania also thinks her students telepathically hang out and communicate together.
It's my understanding that they all communicate together. One student explained it as a grid. They've also started using similar words, which is interesting. The word ploink has come up, P-L-O-I-N-K, and it means like to play almost. Because I'd asked, I'm like, what does ploinking mean? Well, one student told me, and then another one used it, an adult who is not even in the school. It keeps showing up, which is also fascinating to me, which also lets me know they really are on the grid together and communicating between each other. Because the times that plink has come up, that word wasn't even in my mind, my vocabulary.
I also want to include one more story from Maria, the teacher outside of Chicago, who said that her student Stephen makes telepathic meetup appointments with another one of her students when they're not in school together.
Stephen shared with me that he would communicate with Bob in his home during the school day. He goes to see him at his home in his mind, every day at 2:00, and they visit. They have a set time.
As she says this, I think about John Paul, who we met in the last episode, who runs upstairs when he gets home and piles pillows on his head to block out all the noise in his house so he can concentrate on telepathically chatting with his buddies. This comes up a lot, and this is the next question. Do any of the children report communication or other experiences that could be classified as interactions with non-human intelligence?
Well, John Paul, he also saw angels, and he saw the good and the bad. And he was so adamant that we love each other. And he talked about love all the time. That was sort of his message.
You notice that she said that her son, John Paul, had a specific message. Many of these children in these interviews, they report being given assignments by God, just like we are. They report praying in these other dimensions. They pray to God. They're taught by God, just like all of us are. So I hope what I'm about to say will not completely offend everybody. I'm sure it will offend a few, and I certainly do not mean it that way at all. But also several of the parents and caretakers and teachers that have worked closely and had intimate relationships with these nonverbal autistic children reported that they would get images. Not only would they get words and information, but they would get visual images and flashes, of events and things that the children were trying to convey to them. So would it be out of the realm of possibility, knowing that Brandon has a nonverbal autistic daughter, that she might be working with her dad? That she might have an assignment because she has gifts in her dimension. And I know people want to look as, oh, well, they can't serve the Lord. Well, God promised me, and Brandon says, God promised him that his daughter would serve the Lord and do mighty works for the kingdom of heaven. And I don't think he would expect it to look like this, but what if it does? God clearly shows us in the Bible over and over and over and over examples of everything that the enemy intended for evil, God turns it around for good. Take Joseph in Genesis 50:20. Oh, it was terrible. He was sold into slavery. How could this happen? He was anointed, and yet all these terrible things happened. But those events led him to be into position to save the souls. Genesis 50:20. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. Romans 8:28. And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. You can just go over to my Twitter feed, or now X, and type in my channel search bar and pull up the ones on Brandon if you want to see the prophecies that he made that came to pass, like really, really specific stuff that he was shown like flash visions of, similar to the telepathic images that other parents have been getting from their children. And you can also find the link to Brandon's video that he made about his daughter.
There's so much pain, there's so much stuff, and I struggle a lot with talking about it. So, here you go. My little girl, back whenever she was 18 months old, there was a bad flu epidemic going around, and so a lot of people from the church were encouraging us that to go and get the flu shot. You need to get the flu shot. And so we talked to our doctor at the hospital and everything, that we were there, and they were pushing vaccinations really, really hard. And they said, oh yeah, this definitely, you could be hospitalized for this and everything. And so she was 18 months old, and she was already developing, her ABGAR scores were okay, everything was okay. She was already starting to do little words, little things here and there. Her eye contact, everything was normal. We went in and got the vaccination, and we went home that night, and my baby was screaming, and things were really different. She started running a really high fever, and within about a week, her whole mind changed. everything changed. She lost all verbal communication. Her bowels stopped moving. Her stomach swelled up like a beach ball. She stopped eating. She went into this bubble. She cried all the time, continuously. From the time she got up to the time she went to bed, she cried. She hummed, she made weird noises, and she rocked. I can honestly tell you, we didn't know what was going on. And so we went back and we called the doctor and we said, well, there's a problem. She said, okay, we'll come in and I'll examine her and see what's going on. She goes, well, you know, some kids just have reactions sometimes to shots, so don't worry about it. She'll come out of it. Don't worry about it. No, she didn't come out of it. Weeks went by. She got worse. Things were so bad that she would only sleep 2 hours a night. She'd be up. I got 2 hours of sleep at night for months. She kept me up all night long, and I would sit in the rocking chair and just cry myself to sleep, just holding her, and I'd find her in there just screaming, and it was awful. I had to go to work the next day, and I'd fall asleep at work because I couldn't function. I was so tired. My wife was going through literal hell whenever I was at work, with her throwing fits and tantrums and all the things, and it went on and on and on. And finally, we went up to the doctor and we said, there's something bad that's happened and we need to know what's going on with our daughter. And she just kind of poo-pooed us off, like, you know, well, she'll come out of it. We got a certified letter in the mail telling us not to come back to the doctor. She fired us as patients. She blamed it on us being late for our appointments too many times. She told us not to come back. We tried to get a hold of the office and she wouldn't respond or talk to us anymore. It was a total abandonment. We didn't know what to do. We were in our 20s when this happened. So we told family and friends what had happened. And so everybody was like, wow, this is crazy. You know, people kind of, you know, they were like, you need to hire an attorney and all this stuff. And I said, we're not doing all that. I need to have more wisdom. Well, the process kept happening. Years goes by. And I kept standing by faith and believing that everything was going to be okay. You know, I wouldn't allow anybody to speak any negative around us. We just closed ourselves off. On top of not sleeping, on top of everything. She would not eat. She would cry continually. We couldn't go inside any stores. We couldn't go anywhere with her because of how bad her behavior was. So we started seeking help, trying to figure out what to do. So people started telling us, we believe there's something, you know, seriously going on with your daughter, but we're going to have to do a lot of testing. All this to say, they labeled her as severely autistic. It was like the biggest sucker punch I can ever tell. I didn't know what to do. And all I could do that time, because of my faith and where I believe where God was just keep standing. They told us she would never talk. She would never have a normal life. She would always be in diapers, probably because of how bad she was. Forever. To prepare for the worst, all the things. Family and friends didn't really know what to do with it. Everybody started to say it was a devil. You need to go get the devils cast out of your little girl. So we went to a big ministry down in Dallas to go get these devils out of her because of this disorder called autism. that they said she needed deliverance. So we went down and paid a ministry $500 to cast the devils out of her, because we were all so new at this. Got ripped off, basically scammed, and spent thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, everything we could, on credit cards to try to get her help. We started therapy. We started helping her with ABA therapy. We started doing everything we could. It was very expensive, $100 and some an hour, and we would do that. And like I said, we were just putting it on credit cards. We'd get new credit cards and we balance it out. They would give the 0% interest, and I would shuffle things around, all we could, to try to get her help. And so we started doing ABA therapy, and our church tried to help us out as much as they could, you know, giving us time off or whatever we needed for appointments, doctor's appointments and all. And I don't want to keep rambling over this. I've always said I do not want pity. I don't want pity for my life. I'm not going to waller in self-pity, period. I live by faith. Over the years, he's told me over and over again to start this channel to tell you all that he's a healer. And not be moved by my circumstances. I'm not moved by what I see. I'm not moved by what I feel. I'm moved by what the Word God says. I'm just being real with you all. I have prayed for people, like I said, I've told you about the testimonies about God healing them of cancers, terminal diseases, and it's happened a lot. But whenever you feel and you lay your hands on your little girl, time after again, and that power that you feel flow into everybody else flows so freely, and nothing happens for you, it's very hard. A couple months ago, I got real cranky with him at that time whenever he told me to do this YouTube channel again. I told him I didn't want to do it. He said, I need you to do what I've asked you to do. You've been running. I said, Lord, I'll do it. Because I don't want to hear it no more. So a couple months later go by. And he come bring it up to my attention again. So I'm just telling y'all, it's been a process for me to come on here and do any of this for you. Because I'm still living it. I always stay on his side. He's a good God. God's a good God. God's a merciful God. Even whenever you don't understand it, God's a merciful God, and he's a faithful God.
So here's a reply that I wrote back in January on this exact subject. I was talking to a friend on X who is now suspended. But they were actually one of the people who contacted me and told me about the telepathy tapes a few months after I had posted the video on the autistic children having telepathy. But we weren't talking about that. We were talking about Brandon, because he had just blown up and gotten really big. He was on the circuit, you know, and all the preachers and Alex Jones and everybody had him on. He jumped from just being a humble janitor with a couple thousand subscribers up to having 500,000 subscribers overnight. And, you know, God just absolutely blew his ministry up. So they were just asking my opinion on him, because I was commenting back to Whitney Webb, who was being like kind of nasty about it. So, you know, I was defending Brandon. But I was talking to this person who had sent me the links about the telepathy tapes. So this is what I said. I said, but get this. It's a fringe side note, but I think you'll get it. Brandon has a severely autistic nonverbal daughter. Think telepathy tapes. Then ponder if she is telepathically helping Brandon with these, quote, visions of accurate information, because she can perceive things people are planning behind closed doors. And or, like Casey's autistic student, her perception extends outside the constraints of the time constructs. I know some people will find my suggestion extremely offensive, as if I'm saying he isn't really hearing from God, but that is not what I am saying at all. Like the telepathic autist mentioned in the interview with Casey that I posted in my video series, many of these children openly say they are serving the Lord too, just in other realms of perception. So she may be working as a team with her dad, Brandon, sort of the way angels deliver messages to humanity, but we still consider them revelation from God. Think about that. And that's what I was just explaining, that they're working too. To say that they don't have a mission or they're not loved by God or God can't use them wherever they are, to me, that's ridiculous. Of course they could carry a message to others in the body of Christ, just as surely as I can sit here and give you this message. If I can carry a message from the Lord to the body of Christ and deliver that message, why would it be offensive or anything to suggest that they could do the same thing? And it would still be from God. God uses messengers. That word we translate angel doesn't actually mean like winged flying cherub thing. It means messenger. So, I mean, to me, just as surely as I can deliver this message sitting here right now, I believe that they can deliver a message. Now, if they do that by giving us a word, giving us a vision, helping us out, that's between them and God, what their mission is. I'm sitting here doing mine. I hope they're doing theirs.
I see the plan. I see fires. I see the plan. You see that group right there? I see them. It's a huddle. It's just a few. 1, 2, 3. I'm counting their faces. 4, 5, 6, 7. 7. And then there's one big one. There's one predominant. A few. I see it on the minds. It's pressure from the outside. It's pressure on them to make this decision on the outside. You do what we tell you to do. You do what I hear it. I hear it.
So I just wanted to throw that concept out there. You can take it or leave it. I'm not trying to force it on anybody, but I do like people to allow their minds to be opened to the enormity, of the multiverse and all of the spiritual warfare that is going on in the infinite realms, and the magnitude and the reach and the mercy of God. And also to reassure people that what I am saying about these children that are on the augmented spectrum, who have vaccine injuries or who have been experimented on by these transhumanists, all of that I am not at all implying that these people are lost and in hell. I am implying, like all of us, that they have the digital overlay. We're all dealing with that. We all live in augmented reality. God says our flesh is corrupt. All of us, every single one of us. He says our number one battlefront is not like, on the border of Ukraine and Russia. It's our bodies. We have to subdue our own bodies because our flesh is corrupt. Again and again and again, says our flesh is corrupt. So we are all dealing with our own issues and our own demons, and we are all on a spectrum of genetic contamination. The whole gene pool is contaminated, but there is a difference. There is a difference between people who are injured by this biotechnology, people who are infected and fighting off these infections, which is basically all of us, and the people who are marked, the people who are already possessed and completely serving it. And I've done several videos about that distinction, usually with titles like The Black-Eyed Kids, or linked into the hive mind, things like that. Or another analogy that I've done videos on would be Brahma, this ancient pagan entity of the underworld that they record has millions of avatars. It's one entity, but it masquerades as millions of different avatars. That's the hive mind that I'm talking about. Those are the ones who are marked. Those are the ones who are literally possessed by the beast. They are marked by the beast. But just because there are already lost souls, those who are captives of this entity, doesn't mean that this technology that we've been discussing in this whole video is not the mark of the beast. It absolutely is, but it is a process. It is layer upon layer until you lose your free will. And we are not at the beginning of this program. As you'll see throughout the rest of this series, this is an ancient enemy. And that first contamination started in the Garden of Eden millennia and millennia ago. that genetic contamination, that quote original sin that was passed down to every generation of humans. We are all infected, and this thing is assailing us all, infecting our bodies, trying to take over our bodies, trying to kill us and capture our souls. And if this entity has its way, we'll all be black-eyed kids. So I'm not saying that it is over for the vaccine injured, and I'm not saying that it is over for us. But what I'm saying is it's time that we stand up and beat back the beast. We need to help those children, and we need to help each other, because this is it. This is the last stand. Okay, so that's it. That's basically it. That is the information that I wanted to wedge in here as an addendum to the information presented in part 2 of the Entity series, and a preface to what we're talking about here in part 3 of the Entity series. But don't go anywhere. That's not the end of anything. That's just the end of the part about the telepathy and the autists and the augmentation. This is when we really start talking about the entity, not just broadly speaking about artificial intelligence in general, but speaking about the entity and how everything we are encountering right now, or we've talked about right now in this series, is just this new iteration of the enemy, one tentacle of the entity, if you will. And there are lengthy, mind-blowing clips of an interview from Nathaniel Gillis. Many of you know him as a demonologist, although I don't think he prefers that term. But anyway, the information that he is going to present is fabulous, and you are not going to want to miss what he has to say. So with no further ado, I'm just going to tack on the original version of part 3 starting right here. I'm not going to edit it, so if there's any redundancy, sorry about that. I think it starts out with about 5 minutes of clips. I think there was about 5 minutes left of Casey and Emma's talk, and then it just moves from new topic to new topic to new topic, segment after segment, on down the rabbit hole. So I am signing out for tonight. I love you guys. God bless you and your families. And thank you. Thank you to everyone who sent support and basically saved this ministry, kept the website up and the P.O. box paid up, and everybody who came through to keep this thing going. I sincerely appreciate it. And may Lord bless you abundantly. May every soul that we reach be a jewel in your crown.
And I'm like, well, we live in a big world. So if there's somebody else out there that does have a connection to these kids, like, I would like to meet them for sure. Compare notes, come up with a game plan. Like, what are we supposed to do? Somebody else has another piece of the puzzle, like you always say. Like, somebody does, whether it's on the level I'm on or in a different way, you know.
Oh my gosh. I think this is so revolutionary because, like I said, then you see these geniuses that know math or can play an instrument brilliantly, and they look completely normal. And it's deceiving in that way too, to where it can be so high performing that people have a misconception of it that way. And then also on the other end, where it can look very debilitating. And to think of it almost, I don't want to say as a gift, because it's really horrifying, you know, what can lead to this potentially, like how you were talking about earlier with, you know, poisoning children as soon as they're born, and different things that we may be contributing to this happening more, you know, but thinking about there being a layer to this that we're not considering, that there's actually nothing wrong with them aside from a barrier of communication, that they have to do it a different way than we do. You know, it almost makes me like want to cry, but it also brings me so much hope that there are people like you. And I can't say on my end either that there's people just like you that can maybe tap into this type of communication within their network. But it gives me hope that there's other people like you that are starting to wake up to things, just like how we saw the last few years in the medical industry, that, hey, is there something more to this? Or even therapists that work with SRA survivors that are told that, you know, satanic ritual abuse doesn't exist, and, you know, it's just schizophrenia or bipolar or something else, you know. And I feel like you're doing the same in your field, that, you know, these therapists are challenged to do with things that don't meet their normal academic education, and you're asking questions beyond what you're told. And I think it's just, you're a hero, like you're an angel. for being able to do this, you know, and for not giving up and for devoting your time to this, you know, and it sends chills up and down my body, honestly. This is really revolutionary what you're bringing to the table, girl.
I mean, it is. You're right. It is. And I don't really take any credit. I gotta say, I mean, I have put in the work, you know, I kind of sparked it, but it's like, it's almost like it wasn't me, you know, like God is working through me. And I'm glad to give God the glory for this. So I do want to mention, because I have my list of their abilities here. I quickly want to go through that real quick before I go on to the next part. So we know that they are telepathic. We know that they can astral project. And they can see past and future events. They can see angels and demons and other entities. And I want to put some emphasis on this because the kid always tells me that a lot of his trauma is spiritual trauma. And I think I mentioned that to you in our communication. And I want to explain it like this. Whenever you tap into the spirit world and you're able to see these entities, you become a target. Okay. If they know that you can see them, then they're going to come after you. So I learned through him that there were times in his life where his behavior was just off the chain. Like, I mean, they thought something was wrong, so wrong with him that they took him to the hospital because he was manic, crying, screaming, like just losing his mind, it seemed, you know? And of course, the doctors put him on risperidone, an antipsychotic drug. And it did help him. It got him out of the hospital. But when I was talking to him about this incident in his life, he told me that he was being attacked by demons. And that is why he lost every bit of control of his body. Okay. Because he's fighting something in the spirit world. And all we're seeing are terrible behaviors, you know? So I think it's important to know that these kids, they do have behavior issues. And maybe it is because they didn't get what they wanted to eat for lunch, or they're having a hard time explaining that their belly hurts. Or maybe it's because of something that we can't see, you know, and they need us to pray for them. They need us to deliver them from some kind of attack, you know? Does that make sense?
Okay, sorry to break in again. I will try not to do it again until the end of this person's interview. But I wanted to point out that what she just said about we need to pray for them and we need to deliver them, that is so important because it's not just our mission to study them or something. We want to see them delivered. And this next clip that's on the screen right here that I'm going to play, it's an interview that Dan Duvall from Bride Ministries did with this gentleman, Benjamin Brody. And he was autistic, just like the child that she's talking about. And so you're going to be able to hear it straight from his mouth, not even secondhand, what it was like for him. And it's going to be amazing how much it matches. But the reason I wanted to jump ahead and interrupt right now was to point out that the way that Dan Duvall met him was at a church in Australia. Dan is in the deliverance ministry, and he was at a conference with a pastor in Australia who said, I have someone you have got to meet. And it was this gentleman, Benjamin Brody, and he got delivered. And you'll see him in the interview. He'll tell you all about it. So it is possible. There is hope. And we're not even to the great outpouring. Those of you who have followed me for a long time or gone back to my early stuff, because I was on YouTube from 2008. And the very first videos I posted were the 5 visions that God had given me when he called me and baptized me into the Holy Spirit. And the third one, the first one he gave me was the return of Christ. The second one was the nuclear bombs on the major cities. And the third, fourth, and fifth, I had a series of them, were of this amazing outpouring of the Holy Spirit. And I was just laying hands on people and they were just healed. And I did have what they call the gift of the word of knowledge or whatever, but it's what these guys are talking about, this sort of psychic link, where in one of the visions I was walking down the sidewalk and there was a little boy and he was coming the other direction toward me. And somehow I just knew that he had this terminal illness and he was healed right there on the sidewalk. Then, this is really interesting. Another one I had was me praying over these severely damaged autistic children in wheelchairs, and they were healed. Well, it was weird. There was two of them there, and one of them, when I prayed over him and laid hands on him, he was immediately restored, completely physically out of the wheelchair, mentally, everything. And the other one wasn't. He was restored a little bit, and I had to go and pray over him a second time. So I don't know what that meant. I'll find out when we get there. But I just couldn't wait to mention that right here when she said that yes, absolutely, we need to pray for them and deliver them. So I'm going to show you a testimony of this gentleman who was delivered, and I wanted to give my testimony of the prophecy that Jesus has shown me of what's coming. Okay, back to the interview.
And all the doctors want to do is give them medication. So that's something to consider when we're talking about behaviors with especially nonverbal autistic kids. So, they can see these entities and they do become targets. Another gift that they have is telekinesis. I have witnessed this myself. And they also, anything that uses electricity, we'll say, anything that's electronic, they can easily manipulate with their minds. And I call them cyber minds. Cyber minds.
They were called cybers. They were called cybers.
Because it's just so fascinating. Like, they're little superheroes, right? Let me give you one example of how they can manipulate electronics. So I got a new phone recently, and I just had a few pictures on there. I hadn't really put anything in my phone yet. It was, brand new. Well, I go into like my photo app and I pull up, like, how in like an iPhone, it'll have like the faces of people, and then you can name that face. So if all the pictures are then filtered into the file for that one face. Well, I have all these faces in here, family, my kids, my husband, whatever. The only one that has been renamed is his face with his name next to it. And I know I didn't do that, so that's just one little example of like, all right, now you're, messing with my phone. Like, what else are you messing with? So I know that seems probably unbelievable, but it's absolutely the truth, So besides just like these abilities of reading people, they can manipulate physical things in the physical reality.
And that I know of, this happened to me 3 times before I could complete the experiment or the assignment that was given to me. And the assignment for me was to go out of my body and in my astral body go to another room, a specified room, and go in there and pick up a pencil sitting on the table and make a mark on the piece of paper.
Whoa.
Yeah. What the kid is really good at is he's been telling me from the beginning that timing is his thing. Okay. Timing is my thing. He's been typing that forever. And, I can give you an idea of what he means by this. Of course, I'm not tapped into what he is, so I can't really explain it. And he has a hard time explaining because there's no words, there's no words in the spiritual realm that can translate to make us understand. But for instance, he like tells me that he can see different timelines. He can track events on different timelines, and he can do things to make events happen in the time that he wants them to happen. So the best way I can explain this is while we were still at the school, we were sitting in his cubby, and he's trying to tell me about all these other kids like him. He's like, I'm going to show you. So we would sit there, and then all of a sudden he'd say he wants to go outside. So I'd be like, okay, let's go outside. I would follow him. He would walk somewhere, like say on the trail. There was like a little nature trail, and we'd go on the nature trail, and then he would stop somewhere, and we would just wait. And then maybe 30 seconds, maybe 10 seconds, maybe a minute later, a kid would come walking by, and he'd say them. And I'm like, them, this kid can do it too, you know, like that's so crazy. So he would take me. He knows where everybody is, and he knows where they're going to be at a certain time, and he's taken me to where they are going to be, right? So I can meet them. They like, hi, like this whole week, all these kids are like, he's taking me to meet these kids, just in passing kind of deal. And they're connecting with me, and they're telling me, you know, how much they appreciate what I'm going to do for them. They're telling me bye because they know that we're leaving, and they probably won't see me for a long time. And they're like, yes, I'm one of them, and I'm helping you, you know, I'm helping you help us. So I would have these little meetings before we left the school. Does that make sense, or do I sound crazy?
No, that's amazing. That is so incredible to think that they're all connected.
Yes. And you know, if one day, you know, if you ever want to talk to his mom, she has story after story about timing that like is just unbelievable. Lots of different examples, and she's told me many times, like when he was in kindergarten, they would be like, we think that he can tell time because he knows how, like he knows when you're going to be here, and he always just goes and gets his backpack, and like then you show up to get him. Like little things like this throughout his life. It's like, okay, well, how does he know, you know?
Yeah,
how does he so when he says timing is his thing, that's the best I can put it. But I know he has access to timelines, to, you know, future potential events and the unfolding of those events. And he manipulates them. Okay. And then the last thing he told me, well, honestly, it's one of the first things he told me, but it's last on the list. He said that he is God's messenger. That is who he is, God's messenger. And he has been visited many times in his life by Jesus during his most desperate times, like times when he was losing hope, starting at like 3 years old. He has had visits from Jesus just as encouragement, you know, to tell him that like he is worthy and there's a plan for his life, and just to keep going, you know. He is taking a group of kids who, well, oh yeah, also while I'm thinking about this, these kids have been injured. Okay. You're completely right. They have been injured, but that title comes from me, or that word comes from me, because nobody in the medical community is ever going to admit that this is an injury. Okay. They're never going to admit that. That's why such a wide spectrum was created, to put all of these kids under, so that there's no more questions. They're just autistic. Wanted to say briefly that, you know, when all this is going on, I'm like seeking confirmation for myself. Like I need something to tell me that I'm not losing my mind, because it was just a roller coaster, a whirlwind, like a bomb had been dropped on my life, you know? And I'm like, I'm questioning my own mental stability at this point, that like something so unbelievable has happened to me. But I don't balk at the idea of somebody knowing what I'm thinking. you know? So, but yes, it did. Like, I don't care if he's there. I don't care if he's in the astral in my house hanging out, which he says he does a lot. Like, I don't care, about that. But the way that I can control it is it's all about where my attention is, right? So I can go now days without communicating with him just because I'm not thinking about it, because I'm living in the moment. I'm taking care of my family, or I'm doing my chores, I'm feeding my chickens, whatever. Like, if my mind is not focused on him, then, he can't just barge in to my thoughts. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes total sense. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yes. Yeah. Now, I will say that I have seen a comment here and there about mothers saying that they are connected, like mind to mind, with their own children who are nonverbal autistic. And I totally believe that. If you have a connection that strong, and you're in a position where you can really tune in to your child, and get on the same frequency, I think that's what it's all about. Then, that's totally, I'm sure that there are parents that are connected in some way. It's just strange that I'm not his parent, like, I'm not. But for some of these families, they live their life minute to minute, just trying to contain destruction, in their house, or just trying to get to the next day, just get them to bed, hopefully they'll sleep tonight. It's just a whirlwind of behaviors and challenges that prevent them from seeing the full picture of what their child is. All right, so some other things to think about, and this is some stuff will say channeled from these kids that they just want me to touch on while I'm here. So they want everyone to know that they are in there. They are completely aware of what's happening around them and what's happening to them. All right. They have been traumatized, not only physically and emotionally, but spiritually. They have been traumatized. I can guarantee you that every child who has gifts like this has encountered a very scary situation where they have no help. And I think that's where Jesus plays a role, like coming to save them when there's nobody else to help them. They can't communicate what's happening. They can't say to you, a demon is trying to rape me right now. They can't say these things to you. And if they could, would you get it? Would you understand? Probably not. So I guess that's why I'm here. I already mentioned this, but when you're able to see these entities, you become a target. So these children are targets in a way, at least until they get to a point of maturity where they can understand the environment that they exist in and have more control. You see, they want, I think I mentioned this already, that a lot of behaviors that seem to come from nowhere with these children are coming from spiritual attacks. All right. So I think everybody needs to have a good prayer in their pocket to pull out, if they're caring for these kids, and just pray for them, because sometimes that's all you can do. Let's see. They want people to know that there are important reasons why they are in the shape they're in. Okay. Why are they nonverbal? Why do they have problems with their central nervous system processing information? And, they've told me that it's not an accident, and they were targeted in many cases before they were even born. All right. And this is where we get into DNA. Some system knows how to find these kids, okay? Whether it's through spiritual means of divination or whatever. I don't know how they work. I don't know what they're doing. But they have ways of knowing who to target. And I believe it's partially through their DNA, right? They want people to start asking, what is autism?
Okay, we hear you loud and clear. And I also have been on assignment from the Lord, working on these same topics, and we're making progress. We're making progress. So I'm here today to throw my puzzle pieces out on the table, and I hope you guys will share this far and wide, because we know what this is. It's augmented humanity. Right there on the screen. I don't know how many thousands and thousands of clips and documents we have to show to finally blow the lid off this thing enough that we can get a couple of these other people to unify. We saw that God has tons of doctors and nurses in place. We saw when they launched COVID-19 on us that all of these doctors, they stood up at great personal sacrifice. And they weren't afraid to speak the truth. We need them on board. I know a lot of you guys are warriors for putting people on blast. You guys know I'm not big on social media. I only do this for the Lord. But I'm not, I try to have a presence on Twitter or X and all of that. But I'm not one of those people who just can do that all day long and stuff. But a lot of you young people especially, you spend so much of your time on these platforms. You can chop these videos up and put them on TikTok. If you can find little clips in these videos that could be a hook, to get a hook in people on Instagram or TikTok or wherever you guys do your service. And, then point them to the full version video so they can see it in context. And if we all work together, we can blow the lid off this thing enough that we can catch the eye of some of these doctors, some of these Christian influencers who have much larger platforms than I do, and even non-Christian influencers. This may be super interesting to the tech world, to the AI world, if it could fall into the hands of someone who is big into that world, but yet they have an open mind enough to hear what we are saying here. People who aren't compromised. And unfortunately, most of them are compromised because the CIA and the intelligence agencies, they monitor all the standardized testing. You guys know it wasn't just like the ACT and SAT and stuff at college level. We started getting standardized tests. I remember I was getting standardized tests at least, 4th or 5th grade was the earliest I remember. So, and it ranked you like in the nation. So yeah, the intelligence agencies, they target people and they recruit a lot of these people working in like at Google on these projects. They're assets. They've all been recruited by the intelligence agencies. But you never know. It might fall into the hands of somebody who wants to help, who wants to join the cause, join Team Humanity and get these kids some help. And God already has his entire kingdom in place. Everybody is standing their post. It's just that we are all separated. So when he lights this fire, it's going to take off like wildfire. The puzzle pieces are all here. That's why they've spent the last decade sending out the AI algorithms to erase all of our voices. And if they can't stop us from getting this word out, they will take the internet down. They've got the kill switches in place. They're ready. If they got to cut the power grid, if they got to cut the communications, whatever they have to do, they've got all their contingencies in place. They've already preset all the narratives, the solar flares and the solar cycle, and stuff, while they're simultaneously and admittedly firing up HARP, creating these auroras all over the place.
University of Alaska Fairbanks, HARP. This is a screenshot. May 2nd, between the 8th and 10th, transmission notice will be messing around with everything in the atmosphere. Yeah. We're going to be harping the sky and telling people down in Florida that northern lights showing up in Florida are totally normal. They're called the northern lights because you have to be north. The only time I've ever even seen a glimpse of it was in Presque Isle, which is on the Canadian border, way up in Maine. But now we got them in Florida, and people are like, God sent these. Yeah. God did send them. Little g God. You see what I mean? And here's one from last year. Anchorage Daily News. HARP experiment could cause artificial aurora over Alaska this weekend. Yeah, you know what these guys are doing? They're getting ready to set everything up to give us false gods coming from the skies. You know what I'm saying?
They've got their narratives in place. They've got their cards in their hand. We just got to see how this thing plays out. But God has his cards in his hand as well. 1 Corinthians chapter 12. Now concerning the spiritual gifts, brethren, I do not wish that you should be ignorant. There are diversities of gifts, but the same Spirit. There are differences of ministries, but the same Lord. And there are diversities of activities, but it is the same God who works all in all. But the manifestation of the Spirit is given to each one for the profit of all. For to one is given the word of wisdom through the Spirit, to another the word of knowledge through the same Spirit, to another faith by the same Spirit, to another gifts of healings by the same Spirit, to another the working of miracles, to another prophecy, to another discerning of spirits, to another different kinds of tongues, to another the interpretation of tongues. But one and the same Spirit works all these things, distributing to each one individually as he wills. Unity and diversity in one body, starting at verse 12. For as one body is one and has many members, but all the members of that one body, being many, are still one body, so also is Christ. For by one Spirit we were all baptized into one body, whether Jews or Greeks, whether slaves or free, and have all been made to drink into one Spirit. If the foot should say, because I am not a hand, I am not of the body, is it therefore not of the body? And if the ear should say, because I am not an eye, I am not of the body, is it therefore not of the body? If the whole body were an eye, where would be the hearing? If the whole were hearing, where would be the smelling? But now God has set the members, each one of them, in the body just as he pleased. And if they were all one member, where would the body be? But now indeed there are many members, yet one body. And the eye cannot say to the hand, I have no need of you, nor again the head to the feet, I have no need of you. No, much rather those members of the body which seem to be weaker are necessary. And even those members of the body which we think to be less honorable, on those we bestow greater honor, and our unpresentable parts have greater modesty, although our presentable parts have no need for that. But God composed the body, having given greater honor to the part which lacks it, that there should be no schism in the body, but that the members should have the same care one for another. And if one member suffers, the entire body suffers with it. Or if one member is honored, all the members rejoice with it. Now you are the body of Christ, and yet members individually. So the time and the era of all of this bickering over this doctrinal issue or that one or pre-trib or mid-trib or all of the schisms that we see in the truth community now. So we have to stop falling prey to what they taught us. I know they taught us to divide because they want to divide and conquer us. But those days have passed now. There's no time for that. The very next chapter in Corinthians says it very bluntly. It says, when I was a child, I spoke as a child. I understood as a child. I thought as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. And now's the time for that. Laser focus on the mission. Laser focus on Christ. You're looking for the Spirit. It's the Spirit in the person. Eat the meat and leave the bones. If you have discernment, if you have the Holy Spirit, you will resonate with the puzzle piece that you are there to receive. Take that piece and move on with your journey. We're not here to destroy one another. And just as the Word of God has taught us, it says, even on the less honorable vessels. Don't be caught up being stuck up and, better than, well, if you don't agree with what I'm saying and you're listening to them, no, done, You're not going to be able to take part in this move of God unless you let go of that petty stuff. God can raise up anybody. All through the Bible are stories of God even using enemies. So we have to be appreciative and grateful for whatever tool God puts in our hands. If we see someone like Elon Musk, and I have a huge segment on Elon Musk that I'm not going to be able to fit in this video because I'm already well into the 4th hour here, but it'll be in the next one. So most of you know I'm not a huge Elon Musk fanboy. That's just not my thing. Nevertheless, God has provided us an amazing opportunity to use his platform to reach the masses, because that's where everybody is. They're over there on that platform. Now, what he uses our data for and all of that, that's between him and God. He has to answer for that. We have to answer for what we do. And in Mark 9:40, God gives us clear instruction. Like, what do we do about these people? And God says, for whoever is not against us is for us. And again, Luke 9:50. Master, John said, we saw someone driving out demons in your name, and we tried to stop him because he does not accompany us. Do not stop him, Jesus replied, for whoever is not against you is for you. So the Lord has provided everything we need to accomplish the mission. Don't step over your weapons. Like, imagine if you're playing a video game, and like you slay the enemy and then you take their weapon. Or you're going along and, oh, look, there's a box on a table. Open it up. What's in it? Oh, it's a weapon, or it's a superpower, or it's a whatever. Don't step over your gifts and your weapons because you're so dogmatic or whatever. There's no time for that now. We're going into the boss battle now. Whether you like it or not, we're going into the boss battle, and it's no holds barred. They are pulling out all the stops in all dimensions, and they're going to use every single weapon they have, whether it's their witchcraft covens or their high technology or their Nephilim hybrids and cryptids and UFOs. That's something we're going to talk about here in a second in the targeted individuals segment. Is all of a sudden people have put it together that we are fighting one entity that wears many masks. So like Josh over at Paranormal Roundtable, after so many years of taking people's testimonies and passing those testimonies on to us, he began to see the patterns. So if somebody came on and they just wanted to give a cryptid encounter, like, hey, I encountered this frickin' demon in the woods. It was like a werewolf, dog man looking thing. He would ask them, have you ever had any other paranormal experiences? Anything besides this encounter? Like, have you ever thought your house was haunted, or you had any poltergeist activity, or have you seen orbs or UFOs, or, have you had any other encounters? And almost 100% of the time he discovered they were like, well, yeah, but, I didn't call in to talk about that. But yeah, as a matter of fact, I did. But I haven't seen anyone in the paranormal community take it the next step and say targeted individuals. But I have seen them coin the term experiencers. They realize that, okay, there is something bigger going on here, because these people who are encountering all of these forces, whether they're demons or cryptids or UFOs, all of the armies of Antichrist coming after certain people, and they're having experience after experience their whole life, and they don't understand. They're like, well, maybe I'm just gifted or whatever. Well, I submit to you, you're targeted, right? This is spiritual warfare. They send demons after us. It sucks. You guys know, I've shown you the clips. It's not in our imagination. I've shown you the cell phone footage of the orbs. I got Foo Fighters going through my backyard. I've told you the stories as we've walked this journey together of the different things in my house. Oh, my son saw Hat Man. Ooh, I've got a good segment on Hat Man. You guys are going to love it. Okay, actually, you know what? I'm going to put that in right here. Let's talk about that. Let's do that. We've been jamming pretty hard on the autism mystery and technology and all of that. Let's take a break from that. This will actually tie in from the boss battle. We need to understand the kingdom we are actually fighting, this empire of evil, this axis of evil, to bring us from the boss battle through the targeted individual stuff. I want to talk about some of my personal paranormal experiences. Some of them I have shared over the years, some of them I have not. But in light of the technology that we've just been discussing. I'd like to kick around some ideas and see what you guys think. Are we misinterpreting some of the things that we are experiencing? Not that they aren't spiritual warfare, part of what is going on in the other dimensions, but not everything going on in those other dimensions is evil. God also is fighting. It says that war is raging in the heavenlies. So people also report guardian angel encounters and that type of thing. And now we find out there's a spectrum of augmented humanity, and some of these people claim to be like super soldiers for God, active in the other dimensions, being able to physically see and encounter angels and demons, and fighting the demons, fighting on our side in the other dimensions. I've had several angelic interventions throughout my life before I was even, quote, saved. God protected me and saved my life a few times. But I've given my testimony, my salvation testimony, a few times, and you guys know that it was supernatural. There was an actual battle in the atmosphere, and God drove this thing out, and I received the Holy Spirit. And I felt that cold electricity, that thing that was inside me, leave my body. And when it left, all of those desires left with it. And I've given that testimony. Like, I threw away all my music and everything, not to be religious, but I was just like, ew, like that wasn't even my choice. I liked all this dark music because of this thing that was inside me. And then when I had the Holy Spirit, I could see everything so clearly. I understood all this stuff. And that's when I got my calling. And my walk in the Holy Spirit was so intense those first 2 years. Dreams and visions were common. I would pray for people and they'd be like, what is that? I felt like heat go up my arm. What's going on? I'm like, it's the Holy Spirit. It's real. So he actually gave me foundational prophecies about what was to come in my lifetime, who I am, what I'm supposed to do, and all of that. Some of these here are on the screen about there's good times coming. This isn't just all bad news. This is the outpouring of the Holy Spirit is coming. We're preparing for this. And the Bible says kind of what we're feeling now, that all of creation groans together awaiting the revelation of the children of God when he shows up and takes this kingdom down. And it's coming. But anyway, one of the supernatural angel things that I had during that period was a literal guardian angel. I had really high ceilings, and it had to be 8 feet, at least 8 feet tall. And it always stood in this one particular corner of my living room. When I was in there praying, no matter what I was doing, studying, praying, working, writing, it just stood there. And I couldn't see it, like I was looking at like an angel, but you know how they say glimmer man, the cryptid reports, they talk about this almost like a cloaked glimmer man, like the Predator, how, it goes invisible, but you can kind of see the wavy lines, like heat coming off a highway, how that looks, or you can see the change in the atmosphere. It was like that. Like I could see the form of him. He was always standing there, and I could feel him. Like there was one time when I was laying in bed and he was standing guarding me like right next to my bed. And the energy coming off of him was so intense, I couldn't sleep. And I actually had to ask him, I said, please, can you step back? Like you standing right over me like that it's affecting me. This really happened in my life, you guys. And I've never told a lot of these stories to anybody because I don't want them to like throw me in the loony bin or something. Because all of these people in this world with us who have been brainwashed into materialism, that there is nothing above materialism. You're just pawn scum, a monkey, you evolved from a rock, whatever. Just here, buy this stuff. You're a consumer now, you're a slave. Go report to the Human Resources Office because you're a resource like coal or oil. We need you to get in our corporations and slave away. They're just so materialism, that they mock. They're like, oh, flying spaghetti monster in the sky. Ha ha ha, you dumb Christians. So they're like really dumb. And so you can't, they're weaponized dumb. They're so dumbed down that they're weaponized, that they will literally try to put you in a mental facility if you talk openly about the fact that we live in a multiverse and that there is physics in the 3D and there is metaphysics also. they've set sort of perimeters where you self-censor, to self-censor. Like you can say in physics, if you're working in their universities, you can talk about physics and other dimensions and you're a genius and you get a Nobel Prize. But if you call dimensions spiritual realms and you talk about the same thing, then you're a crazy person. It's like, okay, dimensions and spiritual realms are the same thing, guys. And if you guys in the universities want some info on it, besides just like writing some equations out, we hold those puzzle pieces. We have oceans of information on both physics and metaphysics, if you guys are ever willing to listen to us. Okay, but back to my encounters. That was one of my encounters with an entity from the other dimensions that was good and holy and was literally like my guardian angel. He was literally guarding me. But all of these years, all of my life, these different encounters, these paranormal encounters that I had, I still never put it together. I always just assumed these were like random encounters. Like you kind of just bump into the other dimensions sometimes, or they just kind of overlap and you get to, you can catch a glimpse of them sometimes. I just saw it as very random. And the same way in the cryptid encounters that a lot of people experience, they just say, I guess I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. No. Now, in hindsight, I just started waking up to the reality of what was going on in my life with these encounters about the same time that the paranormal community did, like over the last 2 years. So like when Josh would be talking about, okay, so this guy had a dogman encounter, but I asked him, have you ever encountered anything else? And he's like, well, yeah, I had a UFO encounter when I was a teenager, and I had, this kind of encounter. And that's when it started clicking with me. These aren't like random encounters. These people are experiencers. And that resonated with me and it just clicked. I'm like, oh my God, that's me. All these years I've been like, what are the odds? It's so rare to see a UFO or something. And I've seen multiple UFOs and I've had cryptid encounters and I've had haunted houses and I'm like, that's me. I'm a quote experiencer. But then their working hypothesis was still just that. That's what I think they still are to this day, saying that these people are experiencers, that it's not random. Thank you for that. But then God started sending people across my path with the next puzzle piece. So suddenly it would be like one time there was a review posted on my Apple podcast. And the review said, you're a targeted individual, right? And I was like, that's random. That's a review. I'm like, is that a veiled threat? What is that all about? And then someone from the community contacted me and there's only a handful, maybe 5, 6, I don't know, maybe 10 people over the years that I have had phone contact with, a personal relationship outside of, the social media platform. And for whatever reason, this shout out to Renee, love you sister. Renee contacted me. And I don't just answer every phone call, and I wish I could. I have a whole stack of letters and emails and stuff set aside with phone numbers that I hope work. I'm hoping to get free from this hamster wheel of bondage working in the world, that I can do this full time. I would love to actually finish building this community and this ministry and the projects that God has put on my heart. But right now, I just don't, working 3 jobs, are you kidding me? Right now, the grass out in my yard is like, I just gave it up. I'm like, the woods is going to take it back because I can't get this information out and get my work done on the homestead. So I just gave up the war to the weeds and stuff. My mower won't even go through it, but what can I do? I got to get this out. So that's my excuse to all of you who I haven't contacted because I really want to. I would love to. Anyway, but for whatever reason, when Renee reached out to me, I actually called her, just like out of the blue. She said she had something to tell me, and my spirit just like obeyed. Like I just picked up the phone and I called her, and we talked about many things, but she has this testimony of being a targeted individual and how not only had she had these types of experiences, but actual people were sent into her life to mislead her and try to block the mission, try to block the call on her life. And she said, I think you're a targeted individual. And I was like, man, you're like the 100th person that said that. And then it was just like, oh, I'm not an experiencer. I'm under spiritual warfare. They send these things. They send cryptids. They summon things against you. They do psychic warfare against you. They send demons after you. The kingdom of hell is literally targeting the servants of Jesus Christ. Duh. And like the autistic boy says, I was targeted from birth. I started realizing, wait, this isn't something that just started. I had that out-of-body experience when I was 17, where they literally yanked me out of my body into hell. And I had to cry out to Jesus to get out of there. Oh my God in heaven, is that what happened in the hospital? Those stories that mom and dad used to tell me about how I almost died when I was born, and how my mom, it was a funny story to them because my mom, she's so fiercely protective of her babies. Like, she is not afraid to go full-blown Karen on somebody, and I'm glad. She's a firecracker. She's always fought fiercely for her children. But Dad used to tell this funny story about when I was born, the nurses tried to take me away from Mom, and they said, oh, well, she's suffocating, and Mom wasn't having it. But they were saying, she's dying, she's suffocating because she cried in the birth canal. So we have to take her away to this other room. You can't be with her. And Dad said Mom wasn't having it. She chased after me, running down the hallway, bare butt hanging out of her hospital gown, just gave birth to a child, and she's chasing the nurses down the hallway, screaming, you give me my baby back. And it was like just a weird, funny story. But, you know, now, looking back, like what that autistic child was saying, that they were targeted before birth, that there has been a steady stream of near-death experiences in my life and all of these different types of paranormal encounters. And I believe now that these have been attacks from the enemy against the call on my life. Even before I knew there was a call on my life, before the Lord had summoned me at my age where I was ready to receive my calling, that they always knew somehow that spiritual kingdom that is at war with Christ, they know who these people are. And that is scripturally sound. That is backed up by the Holy Bible in Acts 19:15-17, where it talks about those people who didn't have the Holy Spirit, but they thought like the name of Jesus was a magic incantation or something. They saw all of the miracles and deliverances that the servants of the Lord were doing, and they were doing it in the name of Jesus, so they thought they could like use it as a spell, and they wanted to do what the apostles were doing, but they didn't know Christ. They didn't really have the Holy Spirit. But anyway, the point of the verse is that the evil spirits in the person that they were trying to exorcise knew who was really of God and who wasn't. So it says, starting at verse 15, it says, and the evil spirit answered and said, Jesus I know, and Paul I know, but who are you? And the man in whom the evil spirit was leaped on them and overcame them and prevailed against them, so that they fled out of the house naked and wounded. So, yeah, if you're going to partake in exorcism, you better be trained for it. You better, like the spiritual warfare I'm talking about, I've been through my whole life. I know deliverance ministry is something the Lord has called me to, and he has spent a lot of years training me in my calling so that I don't walk in fear and that I walk in the Holy Spirit, because it is him. It is him doing the things, not us. The battle is his. But anyway, here's another verse also confirming that they do know. In Matthew 8:28, when Jesus approaches the demoniac to cast out the legion of demons, they knew who he was. They could see that he was the Son of God. In verse 29, and behold, they cried out, what have you to do with us, O Son of God? Then they go on to say, have you come early to torment us early? So that little tidbit should also be encouraging, that they know he's coming to put an end to them. And so do we. I only have one surviving brother, and they tried to kill him too. He got hit by a drunk driver early one morning when he was going fishing. He was dragging his bass boat down to the lake, and, guys, you fishermen, you get up at the crack of dawn and you go out to start your day, and he was pulling his boat, and a drunk driver who was still up from the night before just blew the stoplight and T-boned him. There's, when you're pulling a boat like that, it's not like you can just tap the brakes and stop And yeah, she T-boned him and broke his neck. And it was unbelievable, the horrific surgeries that he had to go through just to stay in this world. Not that it's been enjoyable. His head is held on by screws and he lives in chronic pain, like unbearable pain. This is a big burly guy, big burly football player type guy. And I've seen him just sit there with tears rolling down his face, despairing life, saying, "You guys, I can't do it. Like, I can't bear the nerve pain. You guys have no idea how much pain I'm in." He says, "But God won't let me tap out." And I think a lot of us feel that way. But it has been a battle just to stay alive, just to keep the enemy from killing us before we can complete this mission. And I know most of you, if you are servants of the Lord, you have similar stories. Life is a battle. People don't want to see it that way. They just, I don't know what they live for. I don't know what the normies live for. They just, to go to work? Is that what they live for? To have a big bank account? So yeah, I would say it's definitely a DNA or bloodline thing when Satan puts a big target on your back and sends these sort of attacks. And don't misconstrue what I'm saying, please. I'm not saying that like that drunk driver was a cabal member who plotted this assassination, or that those nurses in the hospital who snatched me away from my mom and took off with me, that they were cabal members or something. No, obviously not. But the same way during the COVID pandemic, those nurses who shoved ventilators down the throats of all of our loved ones and blew their lungs out and gave them remdesivir shots, and the ones who even gave the vaccine shots and took perfectly healthy people and now they're paraplegic and stuff, they weren't cabal members either. The enemy uses people. And I say that now because before I go on to some more of my paranormal experiences, I want to make that clear that I'm not saying these people who were sent across my path were all in a witchcraft coven. That's not what I'm saying. But I am saying that there is a spirit that is orchestrating things behind the scenes. More than one spirit, just like we just talked about the Holy Spirit and how we all drink from one spirit in the body of Christ, and we are on a mission for holiness, for good, a rescue mission. But there's also another spirit that is animating millions of bodies, just like the body of Christ, and they are not on a mission for good. They are committing crimes against humanity. They came to kill, steal, and destroy. They are the enemies of humanity. So that's what I'm saying, is that this is a spirit that has been targeting me. So before I start this conversation about the next set of paranormal experiences that I've had, I want to play this clip here on the screen from another Josh over at What Lurks Beneath. And he did an interview with this demonologist / exorcist, deliverance ministry, whatever you want to call it. And they describe what I'm talking about here very well. I just love how they put it. So I want to play this clip where he says he came to the conclusion, after seeing all of these different entities and manifestations and everything, he came to the conclusion that it's all one entity.
Right? My parents were talking to the teachers. The teachers, we don't understand what's going on. I would go to school and I would pass out. Because what was occurring to me is I was staying up all night. I was afraid to go to sleep because whenever I would go to sleep, that entity would manifest in my dreams, and I didn't want it to experience that anymore. And so that was, like I said, was instrumental in driving me to want to understand this phenomenon. Number one, I didn't want to be alone, and thankfully I wasn't. There are millions of people all across the world who've experienced this same manifestation. And so that's really what drove me head on, not just to understand it, but how can we help people? How can we deal with the phenomenon? I don't want to do a coping mechanism. I want to give people answers, not just to understand it, but how can we stop it? And that's where I've been now for the last 3 years. And what I found out is very disturbing, very disturbing. Here's the thing that I learned was that the blueprint I grew up with was not fitting at all. And so whenever I would experience a malevolent presence or a manifestation, I would go to my local church. I'd give them everything, and I'd be like, okay, what do I do with this? And over again, if it wasn't my youth pastor, it was my pastor. If it wasn't my pastor, it was my Sunday school teacher. They were not prepared to first of all, understand what I was going through, or even facilitate the questions I was asking. In other words, the phenomenon had eclipsed their blueprint of reality. And the way dogmatism works is if it doesn't fit the blueprint, it doesn't exist. You're crazy. You're lying, or you're just making it something that it was never. Yeah, it never was. And that certainly was not the case. I didn't want to go through any of that. You know what I mean? I didn't want to be alienated from my family and suffer that way. But that was the first time when I realized that there are certain questions that we have to ask ourselves about the phenomenon. If they are all horns and hooves, then why do they have their own belief systems? Why is it that certain demons cannot read? Others have PhDs in literacy and in historical documents. It never made sense to me. And I think that is why that at least for me in my research, that's why I was forced, in a sense, to abandon the dogma and embrace the data. Because the only way we're going to get accurate with what we're experiencing, with what we're documenting, and what our ancestors documented, the only way we're going to get any accuracy regarding that is if we're honest with it. The honesty is important and imperative, because what's occurring right now in the field is we have a lot of shows out there on TV that are propagating lies. And people like me, as an 8-year-old watching that, I'm thinking, okay, I'll do that. And it never works. And so that's when I started realizing, okay, in order to embrace this and learn more about it, I have to get into the literature. I have to go out there and, at the very least, encounter the phenomenon, to learn about it, document it, and understand the nuances of it. Do they have belief systems? Do they have a certain victimology? Do they have a pathology? Why is it that some of these cases, the entities will only arrive at a certain time of the month? And then they'll leave, and then you won't see them for another year. But when that day comes back again, they'll show up and they'll do the exact same things. And so from between the ages of about 15 to 35, I poured myself into witch era literature, demonology, anything I could get my hands on, biblical antiquity, Mesopotamian texts, ritual bowls, and I spent a lot of money on it, but I invested myself in order to understand what's going on. And the conclusions that I've come to in the last few years, they are very disturbing, because we don't know what they are. They have the ability to literally, their access to knowledge, they know when we'll die. They can manifest as someone they have, and I'll get the case study here in a little bit. They can manifest as someone that you know and that you would trust in, and that's for a purpose. They want to manipulate you for their own agenda. And that this whole idea of what they are, and it's evolving, but it does appear to be, and this is my research, at least for me, a singular intelligence that has its own agendas. One of them, obviously, the hybridization program, but it evolves according to our awareness of it. To my colleagues and I, it does appear to be a singular intelligence that has masked itself throughout history. The reason it masks itself is because it's trying to diversify its image. If it can diversify its image, then we as researchers and experiencers, we feed into the propaganda of compartmentalizing the phenomenon to the degree that it can remain elusive and still maintain the agenda that it's after. This is why, if anybody that has a cursory knowledge of the literature and case studies, it's impossible not to come to that conclusion. So that's when I started getting into demonology. I'm thinking, okay, are these really demons? And if they are, what blueprint are they a part of? Are they Christian demons? Are they Catholic demons? The phenomenon is manifesting a mask because it wants to hide from us. Now, this gets back to the idea, are they a threat to us as a species? Well, when people ask that question, they don't realize the question they're asking. What they're really asking is, if they are a threat, then why aren't they killing us off like cattle? Why aren't they going in and murdering everybody, or going in and abducting everybody and leaving nothing but an empty earth? Well, the problem with that model is that it's not parasitic. The data that we've collected, it's not even suggestive. It is parasitic. It has the ability to latch on to people and to use people as hosts. And if, in fact, the intelligence is parasitic in nature, it is after survival. In the way it survives is by self-replicating. In the way it's self-replicating, that's why it's not annihilating us. It needs us. It's like a parasite with a host. It's like a software with hardware. But moving forward, I realize that if we allow the phenomenon to employ propaganda against us, then we feed into the belief system that experiencers in ufology and victims of incubi encounters are different. They're categorically opposite. And so what's happened, especially here in the States, is we'll go to conferences and you'll have different panels or different lectures going on. And you'll have, I'm just going to use the name, you'll have Deborah over here saying, okay, I was abducted by an alien and it appeared to me in the image of someone I had been intimate with in the past. And she'll give her whole lecture because it's ufology, it's abduction phenomenon. Meanwhile, 20 feet away in another room, here's Sarah. Guess what Sarah is saying? Yes, and I was taken by a demon, and this demon manifested as someone that I was intimate with. What? And what's happened is we've allowed and played into the hand of the propaganda by separating these victims and these experiencers. And what my colleagues and I are trying to do, especially here in February, is say, okay, if they're separate intelligences, why are they employing the same pathologies? Why are they employing the same rituals and magic rites? We'll get there in a little bit. What's really going on here? And is it a byproduct of cultural positioning and influence? Some of it. But more than that, the phenomenon is influencing us. It wants us to separate all of these victimologies, all of these experiencers, because it's afraid that if one day we get these women in one room, we get these experiencers in one room, they will begin to rip the mask off of it. And you'll see for the first time probably in history that this is a malevolent presence, in that it has not changed its pathology. It has just changed what it allows itself to be called. Yes, so this is really where we're at in the field, because the question is asked, if it is benevolent, why such a massive, a profound amount of deception involved? It's the phenomenon hiding from us. And so that's when I made it a conscious decision that really propelled my research to a new level. I decided to ignore what they want us to call them. And thankfully I did, because I'd be still groping in the darkness. But what I learned was something, it's troubling, but I needed to learn. Number one, there is an intelligence that evolves according to our awareness of it. I need to say that again. It evolves according to our awareness of it.
Okay, I'm going to play a couple more minutes of this interview, but I wanted to jump in right here and point out what he just said about the phenomenon adapting to us, evolving with us, with humanity since ancient times. So it changes its mask. And what that reminded me of was tulpas, because we have this whole genre of phenomena that are new, like Slender Man, right? So it starts as something made up, and then the phenomenon starts presenting itself as that. So it's like artificial intelligence. What it learns, what it sees us talking about online, and what it sees from reading our minds, and if you didn't watch this video from the beginning, that's going to sound crazy, but it really is scanning and reading our minds. So it's constantly machine learning and adapting to our thoughts and to our civilization. And I believe that's what all these different phenomena are, like tulpas and doppelgangers. I'm on board with what he's saying. That's what I believe is the truth. We are dealing with one entity that wears many masks. And another tidbit I think I'll throw in here, since I've already interrupted him, along the lines of this artificial intelligence, brain mapping us and reading our thoughts. I was praying to God when I was out in the wilderness this past year in my time of testing, and I was asking him, I was very just upset, just worn out, battle weary, tired of it all. And I was crying and I was praying to God, and I was like, what have I done? Why, it was kind of like, why have you forsaken me? What, if I have done something to offend you, why won't you just tell me? If I have tried to build this thing out of selfish ambition and it's not what you wanted, please just tell me. I pray every day that you guide me. What is happening? Why won't you tell me what's happening? Why is everything so cryptic and symbolic? And why won't you just tell me what you want from me? Why won't you just give me straight talk? Just straight tell me what it is you want me to do. And then out of nowhere, after feeling like I couldn't hear the voice of the Lord for months and my prayers were just hitting the ceiling and falling down, out of nowhere, when I said that, why can't you just tell me? Instantly, the voice of the Lord in my spirit said, because they're watching. And when he said just those couple of words, I had flashes all through my mind of all this brain scanning, the clips I just showed of them showing how the AI can read your thoughts and replicate what you're looking at and all of that. Then he showed me the analogy of a football team playing another football team and how you don't give your playbook to the enemy, that there has to be an element of surprise, and that he has a strategy and I have to trust him, and that is why he has asked me to be obedient, that I just have to put one foot in front of the other. I have to trust him, because if he tells me too much ahead of time, it will compromise the mission. But to rest assured that he has this, and my job is to just put one step in front of the other, and he will make sure that I don't veer off to the right or the left. Just trust him and wait upon the Lord. And then in my mind, I didn't even have, this all happened in like a millisecond. All that was opened up to me like in a millisecond when he just said those words, because they're watching. And then right at the end of that flash vision, not in words, but my spirit said to him, but how long, Lord? And he just replied, sit still, I'm hiding you. And that was it. So that whole experience made me remember what we had just talked about in the last series, the Stranger Things series, about how this entity is trying to data mine God, and that they watch the prophets. And it also reminded me of this prophetic dream that Kurt Landry had. He was preaching a message about us moving into fourth dimensional warfare. And he was talking about time, saying God was trying to deal with him about time, something about time and all of this and the fourth dimension. And many of you know that's a topic that we've also been receiving revelation about over the last couple of years. And when he was working on that message for a conference, he had this prophetic dream. So I'm going to play it for you now.
We have crossed over into a new time zone. So the Lord started dealing with me about ministering about time, and this was in the 20. And then I had a dream, and some of you will remember, and if you want to go ahead and see the dream, you can go to kurtlandry.com. But I had a dream on 8/2/21, so roughly the next year, and the dream was about, I was walking in Los Angeles. I had a suit on. I was actually going down Manchester Boulevard, and a 1964 Plymouth Fury with 4 doors pulled up along the road, and they were 2 looking like government guys. And they said to me, we need you to get in the car. We need what you know. And for some reason, I wasn't scared. We went down Manchester Boulevard, and then in this dream, there was like this big bubble that was like in this industrial area, which is there, but there's this big bubble, and we actually went underground, okay, inside this tunnel. And then we got in there, there was like a an older broadcast like place. And I sat down and they interviewed me because they said, we need to know what you know. And so in the dream back in 8/2/21, I didn't really know what this meant, but it has to do with us having supernatural knowledge out of the fourth dimension to take to the 7 mountains of influence, to be able to change the culture, to give this world and to give our nations.
So obviously the first takeaway is that there are agencies. God was telling him that there are agencies, even though this wasn't his interpretation at all, but I would like to give my interpretation if you would like to receive it. Because my lens is very literal more than symbolic. And I think God was showing him that there are agencies and they are specifically wanting to know what he knows, what God told him. That's what's going on. They want the game plan. They want the playbook. They want to know. They're trying to defeat us. But in addition to that, I thought it was interesting that they were in 1960s cars, like the Men in Black always show up in 1960s cars. And that's because they're coming from 1960s. I mean, isn't that exactly what all of the whistleblowers, whether it's Andrew Basiago and Project Pegasus, or the Montauk projects seeping over into the Philadelphia experiments, and here we are in the future, and people are seeing the evidence that what those people said, recorded way back then, we're seeing it now. They are popping in and out of our reality here in the future. These Men in Black in these 1960s cars, these government-looking people, like he's reporting in this prophetic dream, they go and find eyewitnesses to all these different phenomena, and they interrogate them. And then they threaten them not to tell anybody that they interrogated them. So again, there is a very real war raging all around us. And they don't want us to see it, but those of us who have eyes to see, we can see it. And I have a whole segment on the timeline wars. And again, it looks like it's going to have to go in the next video, you guys, because this is getting so long. But this clip was originally going to be in the timeline wars video, talking about the Men in Black and some of these mind-boggling technologies. And I really believe that plays a part. I think that's what the Lord was showing me about hiding me. Because like Noah Yuval Harari says, privacy is over. Forget about it. There is no privacy. There is nothing the AI can't reach. If it wants your passwords, it's got your passwords. This is a farce. We're just playing along. Everybody knows the AI even tracks keystrokes. So if you type something in, like a search engine or an email or anything, a text, and then you erase it, it doesn't matter. It's too late. The AI documents that. It goes down on your permanent record. That's just a fact. We've known this forever. And you know how the Biden regime tried to make everybody know that they want to track if you spend over $600. They want to be all up in your bank accounts. They want to know where every penny's going and who has money and who doesn't have money. And if you're going to use your money more than $1 or $2 at a time, they want to know where you sent it. And again, that's all a farce because they're all up in our bank accounts. They already know everything. So that's what I really believe was happening. It was my invisibility cloak because they target people who they think are influential, people who can cause damage to their agenda. So whatever they're getting ready to launch, like literally right now at election time, this whole Trump assassination attempt, everything that's getting ready to launch, they're going to pull out all the stops. Leading up to that, I'm sure they ran a scan to see who do they need to target. And I was invisible because I didn't have an online presence. I wasn't producing content. I wasn't building a community. I wasn't having any gatherings. I didn't have any money in the bank. They had completely obliterated me. I was handled. So I'm sure that they didn't see me as a threat. So I really believe that was my invisibility cloak leading up to what's launching right now.